What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you the channel's top 5 videos of 2022 as we start winding down the year and I'm taking stock of what worked, what didn't work, handling some behind the scenes business stuff to prepare for tax season. I thought it would be fun to share the videos that did the best, so to speak, throughout the year, which for me at least is especially interesting this year, as this year was the year that I went full-time on YouTube, saw a lot of success, a ton of subscriber growth, we hit 100K, so it's interesting to me to see what videos people watch the most, and I thought I would share that with you guys today. Now, while we are doing the top 5, I did want to give 2 honorable mentions though for my Tactics Ogre Reborn review as well as my Dragon's Dogma review. These are the number 6 and 7 spots respectively, and I mention them as honorable mentions because they are like maybe 500 views from being in the top 5, which is remarkably close for that kind of thing. But speaking of, these are of course in order, and mostly what we're talking about here is watch time, though views tend to go right in line with that. But with no further ado, let's actually dive into this thing. So my 5th most watched video this year was my Wildheart build for Elden Ring, which used the Confessor class. And this video was a lot of fun to make and build, as it's the build that I actually used to beat the game with the first time, and in fact it was so strong that it got nerfed very, very quickly. I was actually the first person to have a video about this up, and it used a weapon called the Ice Hatchet, which pre-nerf was ridiculous. And even after the nerf, it's still regularly used in speedruns, so while it is a little weaker these days, it is still pretty viable, and I enjoyed making it because, again, it was actually the build that I beat the game with the first time through. And that brings us to number 4, which is a surprising one that it's on this list because we're talking about the entire year, but this was actually my review for the Callisto protocol, which just recently dropped, literally a little over 2 weeks ago. Now, the reason this was so highly watched is pretty obvious. I got a review copy and was able to get the 100% review up right as the embargo lifted for a highly anticipated game, which drew a lot of eyeballs to that review. So not a big surprise that a ton of people watched it, but given the rest of the videos on this list being more like early year summer, this one is surprising just because of how recent it was. Though it is worth mentioning that my review for the Callisto protocol was relatively positive, but like everyone, I did call out a lot of the PC issues in particular. So while a lot of people had mixed opinions on the game, mostly because of its performance on PC, I did enjoy it overall, and that video performed incredibly well. So I'm happy to have made it, and it was pretty fun. Now, number 3 on the list, we have an interesting one with my Dragon Age Inquisition review from the middle of last year, actually. This is just one of those videos that people constantly come back to. I have a few reviews that do really, really well over time, such as my Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire review. People watch that pretty regularly on a very consistent basis, like 500 to 1,000 views a day, and the Inquisition review is much the same. But when it comes to Inquisition, a lot of people hit the initial part of the game, are like, wow, this isn't great, and they move on. So with that game in particular, I think my approach of 100%ing a game really paid off, because if you can get out of the hinterlands, it's a much more enjoyable experience, albeit with some flaws still nonetheless. Overall though, Inquisition is my favorite Dragon Age game. Yes, I've played Origins, I will die on this hill. I like Inquisition the most. But that brings us to our number 2 video, and this is Mass Effect Andromeda, my review for this game. Now, the reason I did this at all was that I had actually played the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, which was the first time I had ever played the Mass Effect games, and knowing Mass Effect Andromeda's reputation as being the worst in the Mass Effect universe, really, I was just really curious about why people felt that way. So I jumped into it, did everything, made the review, and apparently a lot of people felt exactly the same way about the curiosity aspect of it at the very least. So when it comes to this video, I think it was just right place, right time. And to give a quick overview, I think the combat in Andromeda is really, really fun, but unfortunately it drops the ball in a few places and makes a lot of the same mistakes that I think Dragon Age Inquisition made, but while also having to follow up the great story of Commander Shepard for the most part, which it just failed to do. Like, honestly, if the Mass Effect name wasn't tied to Andromeda, I think it would have done better. And then we talk about all the problems it had on launch, as it was in a relatively bad state, to be sure. But I'm glad I made that video. A lot of people seem to enjoy it. I enjoyed making it and checking out that piece of gaming history for myself, if you will. But that brings us to our final entry on this list, my number 1 watched video this year. And this is none other than my new player's guide for Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, which is also relatively recent. This one I made back in August August, along with the Andromeda review, actually. But as regular viewers will know, I cover Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous extensively. They're still making DLC for it. Once they finally stop updating the game, I plan on doing a story series for it. It's a game that I love very much, and it uses a system that is much more complex than most people are used to, so you need a guide a lot of times to help you figure it out. And that's where I come in. My new player's guide for that game is like 2 hours long, and it is mostly a combination of all of my other guides for it put into one convenient place for newcomers. And while it, believe it or not, even at 2 hours, does not cover everything, it's a very thorough jumpstart into the game. And the topics that are most pressing that I did not cover, I actually linked some other videos that I thought were really great that did cover those things. So that, combined with the fact that it was a lot of work putting that together, actually, I'm just really happy that people enjoy it so much and that it's helped so many people enjoy a game that I personally love. But all of that, guys, are the top 5 videos of the channel in 2022. Mostly reviews, but a couple guides in there as well. And I'm excited to see what next year can bring in terms of what people watch, what they've done, as I've learned a ton this year and plan on applying the lessons I've learned in these reviews as well as other places across the channel to making more content and growing even farther. But as it stands, we still have a few days at the very least left in December, a little under 2 weeks from the time this video is going live, and I will likely finish at least 1 or 2 more reviews in the meantime. But honestly, it's been a great year. I've enjoyed making all these videos. Hope you enjoyed this look at what did well on the channel this year, and by all means leave comments down below about what you'd like to see in the next year, games to cover, things you think would be cool. I'm always looking for that kind of thing. That's all I've got for you guys today. I certainly hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. I would assume most people watching this particular video probably have already, but nonetheless, just to say it, there it is. But regardless of all of that, truly, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.